See, we got the numbers. So tell your father, brother, sister, and your mother that it starts with us. Ain't no question to give this world a sense of direction. Yeah, 'cause you know how it is. The world in which we live. If you wanna make it happen, gotta get in action. I know life can be full of complications. You and me know this our situation. Start with us. Let's walk the change and celebrate a brand new day. 'Cause it starts with us. There's work to be done for everyone. It's time to get up. 'Cause it starts with us. Every single night, every single evening, people praying for a reason to believe it. But dare I say it now, we can be the ones to lead the conversation, make sure things are getting done. We're doing this for love, we're doing this for life. No one is a stranger, we do it 'cause it's right. We're here 'cause it matters, not for cloud status. It won't be automatic, but we all accept the challenge. I know life can be full of complications. You and me, you know, this our situation. Start with us. Let's walk the change and celebrate a brand new day. Come on, start with us. Walk the change, work to be done right now for everyone. Everyone, get up. 'Cause it starts with us. 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 Yeah. 'Cause it starts with us.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is a little bit after 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, and I'm sitting here with my good friend Craig Cecil, and we decided we're going to share a cup of Joe with you all, and thought this would be a good time to get started. So, for all the new listeners, and I'm assuming almost every week we get new listeners, this is a podcast brought to you by the Human Solution International. And, you hear this entry song and it talks about the Walk for Change. And the Human Solution International has been involved with the Walk for Change now for almost a year and a half. It's a project that was started by a number of individuals and organizations. And as we do, we work with people, we work with groups, and some people come and go. But the project, if it's strong enough, will stand on its own. And this is one of those. It initially started out as a walk across America, in support of civil liberties, human rights, ending cannabis prohibition, and supporting all those that have been victims of it. But the pandemic sort of got in the way of a giant march across America and made it very difficult to coordinate something like that. So what we decided to do was to have it represent the movement and to be represented in the form of marches and walks and protests. And, protests can be anything as simple as, getting out on a podcast and speaking a truth in a place where maybe not all truths are welcome. It could also be marching across the bridge with 100,000 of your closest friends in support of a particular cause. It could be, getting up in front of a capital city or the capital of a nation and airing your grievances. That's all valid protest. We have always advocated peaceful protest. We're an organization that believes that, we can make our will known if we get enough people to hear it clearly and understand the importance. We live in a crazy country. with all kinds of problems with its history and all kinds of problems with its government. But the one thing it has is it's a place where if enough people get together and decide they want something, the will of the people will always be the law of the land. And, President Lincoln at one point had made a comment that I may be butchering it, but I think I catch the spirit. And he said, with public sentiment, anything is possible. And without it, nothing is possible. And I believe that so strongly to be the case that I've spent the last 20 or so years of my life advocating for certain things like ending cannabis prohibition and making it to be where there are not people locked up in prison for nonviolent drug offenses like cannabis. And I believe that over the time, the work that I've done and the work that so many people have done have made a difference, have had an impact. Craig's been on the show now for more than a year solid as my co-host. And prior to that, many, many years of being a very short time co-host for 15 minutes at a pop from behind federal bars. And he's testified many, many, many times as to the power of each individual getting out there and making a difference and taking a stand. And, that's what this is all about. The Walk for Change, is entering a new phase. We're getting more and more support. We're engaging more and more groups and individuals that support, these efforts. Our prison reentry program that we call Welcome to Mars. And we'll be talking a lot about that during the show today. And just our advocacy group, the Human Solution International. So before Craig jumps in here and kind of brings us up to speed with the latest of the last couple of weeks, I just want to let everybody know that, the Human Solution International has been around now for over 12 years, almost 8 years as a 501c3 federally recognized tax exempt civil rights organization. And we've been doing great work throughout the time. But most recently, we've been picking up some steam with this reentry program and some of the other projects that we're working on. And we've gotten some support of some companies, of some nonprofits, of some prominent individuals, and most importantly, some of you who have been around for a long time, but had wandered off for some reason or another. I have been getting more and more contacts from people in the last couple of months that see the activity that we've been doing, both on our website, thsintl.org, and on our social media platforms. And they're seeing that, we're out there rattling some cages, gathering together, making things happen, and they're asking questions. And I want everybody to know that the work that we're doing is tireless, it's relentless, it's thankless, it's powerful, it's incredible, and it gets a lot of really amazing things done for some people. And if you've ever been part of an organization that affected a human being in a positive way, you would know what I'm talking about. And, this isn't an organization that makes anybody rich. Nobody really gets paid at this point. We're trying to change that a little bit, but we've just a bunch of volunteers that have gotten out there and helped a lot of people over the years. And I don't know if any of you have ever done something for somebody before, selflessly or just an act of kindness, whether random or with purpose. But if you've ever had somebody come up to you and tell you that, that thing you said or that thing you did a few years ago, it just had such an impact on me and my family or some loved one of mine. And if you've ever had anybody tell you something like that, even one time, it's huge, it's powerful, it's life-changing. It is a feeling that gives you joy, to know that you had a positive impact on a human being's life, and generally at no real cost to yours other than your time and energy and really just your attention more than anything. If you just give yourself a little bit of give up some of your time and attention, you can make an impact. And whether it's going to court and sitting in a courtroom for somebody, or writing a letter and signing your name to it, or making a phone call on behalf of somebody, maybe donating a couple of bucks, or volunteering on a project. These are all things that so many of you have done over the years. And I just want to acknowledge and thank everybody that's been a part of this organization. I want to acknowledge and thank all of the organizations that have worked with us in the past and that are starting to work with us now. And most importantly, I want to encourage any human beings, companies, organizations, or otherwise. I mean, your dogs can help too, I guess. We welcome all life forms. Since we're dealing with Welcome to Mars, I'll deal with any galactic creature that we can, as long as they're friendly and want to help. But just want to encourage you to jump in and get involved on any level, whether it's a partner, or a volunteer, leadership. We all need, there's all so many places that we need. We got chapters starting, so many ways to be helpful. Mentors we're looking for, sponsors, you name it, we're looking for it. Anyways, we're going to be coming up. It's going to be 420 here in a month and some change. There's a lot of events happening, and generally we don't host a 420 event, but we've participated in many of them over the years. But we're going to be putting together a telethon type of an event that'll be virtual. That's going to be showcasing our mentor program, our Welcome to Mars program. And we're going to be featuring some of the people that have been impacted by it, some of the people that are impacting it, some of the participants on all sides of it, and hopefully a bunch of sponsors. And I want to start off by just saying that my company, Willow Creek Springs, has stepped up to be the first sponsor, and we're putting $1,000 into this project, into this telethon that is going to be sponsoring our mentor program. And I'm going to encourage you, as the head of this company, if you have a company, if you have a capability, if you have an organization that wants to get involved in doing a little supporting of this, step up, be a part of it, put your money where your mouth is. A lot of people say, yeah, I support you. I support you. You're doing good work. Good job. And I say, yep, thank you. I'd sure love to get some help and be a part of it. And anyways, I just wanted to officially put Willow Creek Springs hat in as a sponsor. And I believe another company called
We Do Better Relief.
We Do Better Relief. What's We Do Better Relief going to do?
It's going to match Willow Creek Springs with that $1,000.
All right. There was two. I love it. I love it. So there's two sponsors stepping up. And I know that Yardley's Naturals is a practitioner organization, and she has said that she's going to be donating 5% of her monthly sales to this project. So there's three companies now, all on the West Coast. It looks like West Coast is stepping up hard.
Yeah, I got to do something here in the Midwest.
That's it. Bring one company to come in and do something. And
I'll bet I can.
That's my challenge, my offer, my invitation, my plead to everybody. There's a lot of problems going on in the world right now, and some of them are apparent, some of them are not. And the fact that we've got a stream of people still locked up in the United States of America for nonviolent drug offenses, primarily cannabis cases, today in 2022 is just unacceptable. And when some of these guys are getting out, they don't know what they're doing. They're misguided. They're without resources. And this project is here to help. And Craig, what do you have to say about all this?
I agree. And as you know, I first encountered the humans helping humans at the Human Solution back in 2012.
Wow.
After I had already served 10 years of my life sentence for marijuana. And just that interaction with coming on the show, like I told you, in the prison is a very different society. And its societal rules are extremely rigid because so often, as a lifer, me being in the higher custody prisons, so often the penalty for a violation of the rules were you lost your life. So, I mean, these are violent, ugly places. And But there's rules in the prison that you can only hang out with people of your own car, your own gang, your own group. And
Right.
for instance, me as a white person wasn't allowed to have a black person in my cell. I mean, these are very rigid rules. There's all kinds of rules, like if somebody steals something from you, you're not allowed to go take it back and beat them up. You have to go through your shot caller of your group to contact the leader of his group. And then, they, whatever, comes beyond that. Usually the groups beat up their own people for violations.
Wow.
And where I saw a bit of a change in that was brought by the Human Solution. When I could get on the phone to you at 7:30 my time in the Midwest there,
All right.
and it's
That's
really
popular.
difficult to time when you get on a phone in the prison because the lines are, so long for the phones. And but once the Human Solution started helping the prison, because the dental office had been closed for months and all kinds of people were having all kinds of dental problems. And then we heard that as a result of the Human Solution show, that a lot of people were calling and complaining and putting pressure on the prison and putting pressure on the main office in Washington, D.C. The inmates took up to respect that. So irregardless of car or gang or color or anything else, the 135 guys in the cell block made sure I was on a phone at 7:30. And
It's
so
interesting.
it does make a difference when you help people. People fall in line with that, just as those, a very disparate group of 135 inmates did. Some of them murderers, some of them worse than that.
Well, it's interesting, Craig, because when the people that reached out to try to help you because you had a dental issue that wasn't being resolved, they weren't necessarily trying to have a ripple effect go through the prison. They weren't actually necessarily trying to cause something that would even get noticed. We were just trying to make sure you got your teeth taken care of. But that's the deal. When you start doing these kind of work, these kind of selfless acts, just as negative actions can have negative ripples, positive actions can have positive ripples. And inadvertently, we might have helped some people we didn't know anything about get their teeth fixed too. And
Absolutely. Because we got a dentist back.
right. And as a result, you were able to get some kind of acknowledgement that something that you did caused us to do the thing we did. And there was a positive effect for it. And, it's a weird thing in the prison environment, as messed up as it is, there is some common sense to its way of acting, and it's very reactive. So if something happens, good or bad, there's usually a direct effect from it, right? And it might not make sense out here in the world we're in, but in that world, when something is good, usually there's a positive response that comes from it. When there's something bad, there's a negative direct response to it. In this case, something good had a positive response that benefited you, turned around and benefited a lot of people, even if inadvertently.
And it made changes within the prison. Like you say, it raised the quality of living for, so many inmates in that prison. But the ultimate, of the activist showing that just one person at a time can make a difference is a whole group of people that, probably virtually all of them, or have a connection to virtually all of them, went to the White House and asked them to grant clemency to me and get me out of prison. I never even applied for clemency.
Right.
I didn't even have an application in. But that group of people calling and writing and, making speeches and hanging up posters and all the different things that all these different people did, they actually got me out of prison from serving a life without the possibility of parole. The only sentence worse than that, and may not even be worse than that, is the death penalty.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
But the people setting out to help somebody, the humans helping the human me, actually sprung me out of prison.
And And that's the possibility. I always talk about the power of one, and there's a lot of people. I think for every person that gets up and even bothers to pick up the phone, and do anything, even if it's just to raise their hand and say, I want to help, or maybe to donate $4 or $5, or to, show up at some event that we do, and or even get up and speak. I think that there's probably many people that are just like them that would do it, but didn't. And I think that that's the thing, is you start building momentum. And I think that that's what kind of part of my hope is with this show, and in doing the work that we're doing, and recording things and creating content for social media, is to show people the effect that this has, that each one person that actually does step up and do something, there is a real effect, and it takes less people than you think to have an effect. And people think, oh, well, if I don't get 10,000 people together, nothing will happen. But that's not true at all. I've been in situations where there was less than 100 people that got together in a place and made a message clear, and showed that they represented interests, whether it's organizations or even just through their own organization. When a group acts organized, it's indicative of a deeper organization behind it, because most people don't get together and figure something out, right? You get 1,000 people together and they'll just bounce around like ants. But if you get 1,000 people together, 100 people together with a single message and signs and whatever it is, whether it's songs, chants, or just a press release, for God's sake, it lets those intended know that there is something bigger behind it. And that something bigger is the will of the people. It's that public sentiment that Lincoln was talking about. And I think it's...
And we just heard of it recently. 3 weeks ago, Rory Meeks was featured on this show, speaking to us from the prison in Sandstone, Minnesota.
Right.
And Rory Meeks is I believe, about 7 years into a 20-year sentence he's serving right now in federal prison for a bunch of plants his girlfriend was growing in the basement of a house.
That was such a terrible story. That story shook me, because, Craig, Rory Meeks could be any of us. How many people have been involved in a situation like he was, where whether it was a girlfriend, a wife, a friend, a sister, a brother, that had a few trays of cuttings under a light somewhere, and they were involved, and somehow there was a fight, and the friendship or relationship somehow got damaged. How many people have been involved in a situation like that?
Oh yeah, because that case involved somewhere right around 300 basically seedlings.
Yeah,
but he qualified to go home on home confinement, and the prison just didn't feel like doing the work and processing his application to serve his time at home.
Right.
And he's just shy of 60 years old, and a family guy, but as a result of this show, and admittedly some of his friends and family members, a bunch of calls rang out to his prison. And last week they came with the exact same words they told me. And they say, we have reconsidered your application. So now the paperwork is in motion. Hopefully it's made it past the initial hurdles, which are usually the toughest ones. There's a good possibility he'll be sitting at home in about a month or two.
Wow. Well, Craig, that's one of the things. It's interesting because, we've had a lot of people over the years that have come and gone that we've helped, people that have gotten out of prison, people that have gotten out of having to go to prison. And some people stick around and help us and some don't. But when you decided you wanted to engage this and be a part of our team, I knew that was a huge, huge, huge asset, not only just because I like you as a friend, you're a good guy, but most importantly, for this purpose, that you've got all this experience with these very things we're dealing with. You know, who has that sight that says, well, this thing that we just saw, like me from the outside, had I not spoken with you and engaged similar things before, I wouldn't know what to think about that. I might think, well, let's keep pushing and get even more calls. Maybe that would have a negative effect. But you had the good sense to say, no, it's in motion. Don't do anything to maybe push it off track. And
Right, let's stay on this. I mean, if there's a few calls, it won't hurt anything.
right,
But like I said, we've made the difference where now he's considered. Now it's made it past actually the first 3 stages of about 8,
right.
and everybody's really excited about this, especially him and his children.
Of course. Well, the cool thing is, though, is we're in a particularly good spot because we are kind of ready at the fingertip. We got a press release already written. We have our finger on the button. If it turns out that there's some kind of a hiccup and it starts to roll backwards, we have the ability now in short notice to do a call to action. But knowing that that probably won't be needed, we don't want to spend, number one, we don't want to go and rile up somebody that's already kind of ambivalent about this or isn't sure. But number two, the goodwill of the people that we ask to make phone calls, you can only do that so many times if it's not going to be effective. And I always have said, like when it's court support, I tell people, hold back your resources till you really need it. Wait till you're going to pick that jury, because if you have people come to all the pretrial hearings, they get burned out. They can only take so many days off work. They can only, sit in court so many days, and you can't expend it all at once. So I've always told people that, whatever resources you have, hold your ammunition, don't fire all your bullets out, because if you do, you don't have any left. And so we're all learning as we're going, and I feel good that we're, a lot of people know about this. These shows are now they're broadcast on Blog Talk Radio, on the Relevant app. It's being sent out through the Facebook Live, and then rebroadcast on KM420 Radio every week. And there's archived versions of this too. So when somebody hears about a show, they can go back and listen to it. And I think it's starting to have an impact, and I feel great. And man, what a great opportunity it will be if we get to talk to Rory on the other side of the wall.
Hopefully he'll be in person here on the Zoom with us, just like I suddenly appeared in the flesh here.
I love it. This last year has been as rewarding as any year I've dealt with, because we've been able to meet all these people, literally not every week, but I'd say 2 out of 4 weeks we've had a new guest and somebody that has, been released recently, or, in Rory's case, he called from prison, but still somebody that we're engaged with as a result of this program. I just really feel like we're making a big difference. So
another update I'd like to give is, as you know, the activists convinced the White House to look at granting me clemency. Actually, it convinced them to look at granting clemency to 12 people serving life in prison for marijuana, and or de facto life, 50 and 60-year sentences. And what the White House does is they don't just rely on the politics of it and say we're going to do this, because they don't want to release somebody that might go out and hurt somebody, so they have to do some background checks. And they rely on, believe it or not, some private groups that have a whole lot of lawyers and a whole lot of talent in these kind of issues, and have worked for a whole lot of administrations in the White House. And that outfit worked on my petition and the 12 of us that received clemency on President Trump's last day in office. And that group, and God love their connections in the White House, has reached out to me to publish the list of federal prisoners that I'm working with in federal prison that are serving time for marijuana.
Wow.
I'm known to have at least the most comprehensive list because I work with all the advocacy groups and have all their people on the list. But
Wow.
I am really excited about this. And now I don't know, what the end result will be, but Joe Biden and Kamala Harris both made promises during the campaign that
Right.
they wanted relief for marijuana prisoners, and now they have the power to do it. Hopefully the group I'm working with and all that, and I'm really excited, we're going to have petitions and lists and pictures and stories from everybody that's in federal prison for marijuana. And for the
Wow.
listeners, if you think there might be somebody that you know of in federal prison that might not be on my list, please get that name to me or to Joe, and let's get them on the list because this is a big deal. I mean, now I don't know what its chances of success are, but my chances of success were really low, and here I am.
Well, and that's just it. These are those golden opportunities that only come around maybe once, and the fact that it took you, almost 20 years of an experience to get to a place where you'd be considered to be an authority on a subject, and to have that list that these people are wanting, that these people have the ear of those that can make a difference. This is gigantic. And so for everybody that's watching, Craig just put up his email address. And, if you don't know how to get a hold of Craig or myself, or this isn't apparent, you can call in here at 563-999-3052, and Becca will take your information, or if you've got somebody that you want to share, somebody that you think might not be on our list and you know about them. And I'm going to go ahead and put this chat up public so everybody can see it, and move that over to the side so we can see. There we go. All right. So what you just put up there, Craig, is now up there for everybody to see. And this is one of those things. It's like the Dalmatians. If you ever saw that movie where the Dalmatians had to get the word across the land, and one of them would bark and the other one would hear that one and bark, and they'd bark, and it just went where it needed to go. We kind of have, in jail, they have what they call a kite system, where you write a note and it gets over to one guy and they send it over to the other guy. And, you just put it out there and hope it gets to the right person. And if it does, maybe it'll come back to you with another note that gives you an answer. And it's a strange little system. I don't even know how it works, but I know that, that's the only system that's going to work unless you got a better one that nobody knows about. And this is kind of like that in some senses. There's not a big industrial mechanism here. This is just people helping people, and this is a simple solution. But Craig he's the matrix switchboard guy right now, and he's got one finger plugged in to the people that can make a difference, and he's got another finger plugged into the guys that need the help. And then there's a bunch of us out in the field that can do certain things in certain ways, and he'll take us and plug this person into that person and that person over there. And
I'm the switchboard operator.
the switchboard guy. Yeah, absolutely. But in a lot of ways, that's the most important piece of the puzzle, because without that communication and without the resources going where they need to go, it all just goes up in smoke. There's no value to all the effort. So
but we just have to keep from frustration of thinking that our efforts aren't working.
Yeah.
Because as we look at it, look at the polls that we've all seen of all the people that favor the overall decriminalization of cannabis. But yet, what are our politicians doing? Even though they're elected by us and they're supposed to represent us when they go to the state house or go to the federal, the U.S. Congress, they're not doing it because, unfortunately, we're competing with people on the other side that don't want everything decriminalized and open and available to everybody. And those people, in a lot of instances have more money than us to give huge campaign donations and things like that. So what we have to do is we just have to be, stand firm in our, in our direction of pushing that this is what we want and this is what we want to be heard saying. And that makes the difference, like those people that contacted the White House on my behalf and for the other 12. It made a difference to change the course of the presidency of the United States to sign a piece of paper with my name on it.
Absolutely. Well, they say money talks, and that's what the big lobbies represent. But the deal is that when the people talk, and those elected representatives recognize that the people are actually talking, the lobby doesn't vote for them, and they know it. But the problem is they know that most of the time the people don't do enough, and they'll just vote for whatever the media machine directs them to. But when the people stand up enough, they can't help but to pay attention, and they can't help but to give credence to what we'd say. And it doesn't matter how much money gets thrown at it if the people start speaking loud enough. And this is one of those opportunities. They don't ignore all these polls. They're not ignorant of the public viewpoint. They just aren't persuaded enough yet. It's too easy to take that lobby money. It's too easy to take that influence, and we're not upset enough to force that hand. But what's happening though is more and more incumbents are getting voted out of office, and more new guys are getting brought in to give them a chance. And there's less and less of that good old boys club in Congress, in state legislations, assemblies, and senates, and even in local governments. I'm watching more and more recall efforts. I'm watching, the people speaking more and more. The people are getting woken up, and I don't mean being woke. I just mean being woken up, and they're actually getting out there and they're having an opinion, and they're willing to put forth an effort. And it might be contrary to what these big lobby companies, these big businesses, these giant corporate monsters would want. So it's a golden opportunity in American history right now for us to make those changes.
And we just seen a big example of that over just the last week or so here, in that with the attacks in Ukraine, we know that if the U.S. cut off Russian oil imports, it's really going to make our terrible gas prices even worse. And none of us wants our gas prices to go up any more than shoot what they have just in the last week. But the people stood up and were loud about it, saying we're willing to pay a little bit more for gas if we can help those people in Ukraine, if we can eliminate some suffering in Ukraine.
Yep.
And sure enough, the government fell in line with that.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example. You're absolutely right. When push comes to shove, and we get an opportunity to raise our hand, and it's unfortunate that in so many cases it takes a major world event to get people to even have an opinion. And what people can and need to realize is what's been happening in the last 100 years. It was 1937. That's almost 100 years ago when they began this attack. And 1971, that's 50 years ago. And that's when the attack got really strong with Nixon's Controlled Substances Act. And that's 50 years. We've been the recipients of a war declared on us, literally, by our government. And 50 years, there hasn't been a 50-year war anywhere, but there has been here in America by its sovereign citizens, or by its government against its sovereign citizens. And it's still going on, even though we've got a lot of, shreds of freedoms that are coming out of legislation that's happening. Federal government can still move anytime it wants in the same way it could back in 1971, because absolutely not one word of the Controlled Substances Act has been changed in our favor. Not one word, not one letter, not one colon or period, nothing. It's exactly the same as it was written. And that's what we got to remember. It's not over, and we've got to keep pushing.
And sadly, there's a whole lot of people, especially here in Illinois and in California, where there's recreational marijuana, that'll just stand up and say, well, marijuana is legal now, we're done.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is in California or in Illinois, if I get pulled over driving down the street with 4 pounds of marijuana in the back seat, I'm facing probably going to prison. So no, it's not legal. Alcohol is pretty much legal, but I can have the whole back seat full of bottles of whiskey and I'm fine.
You have a whole garage
as long as
full
I'm
of
not
it.
drinking them.
Exactly. You can have a whole garage full of it. You can even have a little backyard still, as long as you're not selling it. You can manufacture it. You can produce it. You can have it, and you can drink all you want, as long as you don't act in certain ways. And it's legal as anything, legal as the air you breathe. And it's not in any way, shape, or form, no matter what anybody's laws are, anything like that. And we were lied to. The lobbyists that pushed those laws forward in every state that did, they all used that regulate it like alcohol to get people to buy into it. But they didn't regulate it like alcohol at all. They regulated it like a toxic virus from the planet Jupiter. And we got to regulate and make sure that those people can't have it. You can't have this many, and you can't have it that way, and you can't have that form of it. You can't take it here, and you got to do that. It's nothing like alcohol whatsoever.
And like I say, I used as an example just a few weeks ago, right on this show, is Ramon, who is in California serving a life sentence for 1 pound of marijuana, and he's already been in prison for 10 years. And right now he's sitting in the Shasta County, California jail, hoping that a judge will reconsider his sentence. But so far it's not going very well. That everybody's standing on, well, that's the law, you got to stay in prison. So really, no, marijuana is not legal in California.
It's
not legal in
California, where we started the whole thing with our medical law back in 1996. And everybody in California, oh no, everything's cool, everything's great. You know what? I just heard on the news today, it was today or yesterday, and they were talking about in LA County how they believe they've eradicated 70-some% of the illegal marijuana operations in LA County. And they're talking about thousands of plants and millions of dollars and all of this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, all the illegal marijuana. And so what do we have here?
A bunch of arrests.
A bunch of arrests. They were talking about 700 arrests, and they claimed 400 and some of them were misdemeanors, but that was over 200 felony, and out of those 200 felony charges, I bet you somebody was going to prison. I'll bet you at least some of those guys are going to end up, and then I'll bet you the feds get a hold of some of those. And of those that get caught in the feds, well, guess what? They're living by the same rules that applied to you when you got a life sentence. They're living by the same rules that applied to George Martorano and Randy Lanier and John Knock and all those guys that we've historically had in our world, in our life, that ended up with life sentences in many cases for a first-time offense, and no violence, no victims, and no priors, and still a life sentence for pot. And it could happen.
And they all heard the same thing in federal prison that I did from many of the prison guards and staff is, you don't belong here. You should have never had that sentence, not for marijuana.
That didn't help you get out though, did it?
No. It helped our standing maybe because, we weren't looked down upon it as some of the violent offenders, or especially the sex offenders or something like that. But still, nevertheless, we're still in the same prison with them. eating the same food, wearing the same clothes, in the same dirty cell,
Exactly, exactly. Well, listen, we've got 15 minutes left of the show, and I want to talk about the Welcome to Mars reentry program that we've been working on now for, geez, it's been many months, and we're going to be hopefully tomorrow having a meeting where we're going to get into kind of the state of the project, and work on developing some of our next move strategies, talking about the people that have been affected, and just the actions that have happened, and I'm kind of excited about that. I know last week you were out at an event, and we weren't able to hear much from you. What's been going on with you? I know you're working in transitioning from one role to another, and we're trying to get you some gainful employment. How's all that working out?
Well, the employment, I'm still, fighting for some better employment, but every marijuana event that I can drive to, I've been going to. And now, as you know, because my sentence was over 3 weeks ago, I'm able to drive into Michigan and the close by states to here in the Chicago area. But at these events are all the people that work in the cannabis industry, many of them in peripheral roles, selling equipment to the cannabis industry and things like that. And I'm ending up at these events as the only person to remind them of who founded the industry and what they paid to find to put that together. Like
Right.
one thing I bring out is my indictment said in 2001 that I was responsible for bringing 39 semi loads of marijuana to Chicago in a 20-month span. Now, what do you think created at least part of the demand, if that was completely true? But
Right.
who do you think created a lot of the demand for cannabis in the Chicago area? And
Absolutely.
what price did I pay? And what price did the people I work with paid? And things like that. And hopefully we can get the industry to remember those of us. Hopefully we can get the industry and get people to walk in the cannabis stores and say, "Hey, how many people do you have here that have been to prison for marijuana? How many people do you have here that have a conviction and it keeps them from a lot of things because they have that conviction on their record?" And that's what we're helping to do with Welcome to Mars. Is people like me come out of prison and we've lost track of the world. Like I told you about the rules in the prison. If somebody steals from you, you can't tackle them and grab them or anything like that. It's a different world. So when I come out on the street, I have to transition back into being a
Yeah.
real person in the country.
Your neighbor doesn't have a shot collar.
No,
You
like
don't
I
have
told you,
your-
the most amazing thing of my trip home from prison was stopping in a gas station, and I walked in to get something to drink, and the clerk in the gas station was nice to me.
Right.
I haven't had somebody nice to me in almost 20 years at that point.
Right. Absolutely. Crazy. It's crazy. Well, what do you think that, the overall, like, you're getting a chance to talk to these people. I know in the past, the Human Solution is represented at many of the events, and we always had kind of a mixed bag. The people would always say, yeah, I support you. I support you. But, after a weekend of being in front of thousands of people, you'd walk home with a handful of nickels and a few members signed up, but not a lot of real action. What's your thoughts? Do you think people are really, and these organizations and companies are ready to get behind and actually really take some action?
Yes, especially I think our ticket to the future on that is to show actual humans, actual people. It's one thing to talk about marijuana laws that we don't like, but it was quite another to put Rory on there that we could ask questions to Rory. We could listen to Rory explain his situations in his own words. That
Right.
he's doing 20 years in prison for 300 plants about the size of his hand. Now, how can this be in our, in this day and age?
No,
And
absolutely.
that's what I think is going to make the difference if we get that attention out there, just like they're doing with the people in Ukraine. If the media didn't put pictures of those individual people and those houses and those buildings collapse and the families suffering and the families talking about what they're, having to go through, we wouldn't be willing to pay more for gas and get that done here in the United States. So actually showing real people and real situations, I think is going to be our solution. And why in California do most of your people that really need marijuana for medicine, why can't they afford to go to a store and buy it?
Exactly.
That those are the things we have to get changed, and we have to show why the law is wrong, not by saying it's wrong, but by showing the person that's suffering as the result of that bad law and bad tax.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's interesting in life when you're being a business owner or just negotiating with people. When you have an issue or a problem, if you start pointing fingers at the problem, you get defensive responses and people don't want to engage. But when you actually show, hey, this is a thing that's happening, what do we want to do about it? And maybe even offer a solution, say, well, we got this project going on and it looks like it's going to help. What do you think? It's a different approach than just going, that's a bad thing. Because you can say that's a bad thing all day long, and there's not really a one-man solution for it. But when you can say, hey, we got these people or this project, this situation, for example, because of the bad laws, the cannabis that everybody thinks they want or thinks they have access to is so expensive that most of them actually don't have access to it. Well, that's the real problem, right? And the cause of that real problem is the bad law. But the problem is those regular guys that want the cannabis, they can't afford it. So then what do? They have to go to the illegal cannabis or grow the illegal cannabis on their own to go get the cannabis the way that they can afford it. So I think that definitely or pointing out that the guy that doesn't belong in prison is in prison. Maybe that's
Or we looked at Sandra Bowen. She
right.
served 13 years in prison for cannabis. Nobody was hurt. She wasn't rich, any of that. And during those 13 years, her family could only afford one time was she able to see her children.
Right.
But beyond that 13 years that judge gave her, they also deported her to Jamaica. And, and her family, of course, is going to struggle to try maybe someday to get down to Jamaica and visit her and let her meet her grandchildren for the first time. And these are the stories we need to show out there. It's one thing to talk about that people get deported over marijuana convictions. It's quite another to show Sandra that's never met her grandkids.
But this is the thing. Sandra is part of our program. She's in the Welcome to Mars program. She's actually in the process of starting a Human Solution chapter in Jamaica right now. And this is one of those personal stories that I want to be able to feature on our telethon when we do it. And that people can realize, if you want to help this project, if you want to help this program, it might mean you've got some dollars to give, or it might mean you have an attorney that that might be able to help in unwinding some things, or maybe a guy who knows a guy, or maybe you want to get involved in helping us organize or orchestrate some of these things. These are the real people that we're affecting and helping. And just as much as in the past, we had a lot of defendants that we were supporting, people that were going to trial, people that were in pretrial scenarios on bail, incarcerated prior to trial, or having their resources seized and having a difficult time fighting. We were supporting by helping them get legal counsel, by helping them by making sure they had their bail, helping them by making sure in some cases that they had their rent paid, some cases just being there in the courtroom to support them. Those are all the things we've done in the past. And now we're working on a different approach to it. We're still helping the people in court when we hear about them and they want the help, but we've got these people here and now that need our help, and they have a real case, a real story. Maybe you know somebody that has an influence on a situation. As impossible as the situation is, Craig's situation was impossible. He was never going to get out because he was in there with life without possibility of parole. And I was going to go to prison for 12 years. I had no way out of this thing. I was convicted by a jury, and there was no way for me to avoid that. And I didn't go to prison, and I didn't rat on anybody. And we fought our way. We didn't give up. We kept going, and we had the community support that got together and caused the impossible to happen. And I believe that we can help Sandra Bowen. I believe there's somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and there is something that could happen. As impossible as it might seem, I believe there's a way for it to happen. And in the worst case scenario, we could get her family to go to Jamaica to visit her. And that we could do just with dollars. If we just had some dollars, we could make that happen tomorrow. So I strongly encourage, implore, ask, beg every single one of you that's listening, help us to help those people. We're going to be talking more and more with and about those people. But I want to showcase, we got 3 that stepped up this week. We've got Yardley's Naturals, a practitioner in herbal and natural medicine. We've got We Do Better Relief, a nonprofit we've been working hand in hand with up in the Pacific Northwest, up in the Portland, Seattle area. They've been providing food for literally hundreds of thousands of people up there, doing great work, working with the Walk for Change. And of course, Willow Creek Springs, that's been supporting this from the beginning, but has given a generous donation. And who's next? I sure want to hear from you guys. THSINTL.org, that is our website where the program is prominently featured. Reentry program right there. And there's actually just today a big document, and it's a study that talks about, it's about, I don't know, 120 pages, but it gets into the hazards and the pitfalls of reentry versus integration, and the difference between when the problems that an inmate has from the time they get out till the time that if they get integrated or if they get sucked back into the system. And it's really comprehensive. I haven't had a chance to read it all, but if it's not up there right now, it'll be up there in the next day or two. I encourage you to pop it open and see what it is that we're up against and why we're trying to help so much. Well, we've got Tom Corby sitting here on hold, so we're going to bring Tom up here and see what he has to say real quick. And we got a few minutes. We're probably going to close the show down almost on time. This has been a relatively glitch-free show. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe we're going to start a trend here. All right, Tom Corby from Central California. Welcome to the show. Actually, NorCal, we call it, but it's just above Central. How you doing, Tom?
Seconds.
You are live on the air.
Joe.
How you doing?
Oh, okay. Well, I want to make sure. Sometimes so I got to catch my breath.
Okay, you have my permission.
As always, Joe, so important. Thanking you, Becca and Craig.
60 seconds.
And all those on the front lines out here. I've been fighting for 54 years to have my right to have this medicine. And like was brought out earlier, yes, California used to be the best. Not only with our doctor's recommendation, but it was #1 around the world. Now it's like 24th. It's so sad to see. I was born in El Segundo, California in 1943. I was a surfer. I'm a
10 seconds.
Sad, all about fishing. And without our lawyers, we wouldn't be there today. A lot of you folks out there don't understand. Like Joe said today, when you go to prison for our sacred plant, and nobody should. I hope that none of you have to ever experience that. On the other hand, it's a blessing because we stand our ground so the next folks don't have to go through this. And when they do, the Human Solution International will advocate for you. When I think of that, that I'm kind of rhyming everything with the song because I've been doing some recording and I want to share it. And by the way, I want to thank everybody for an awesome birthday, second to none. I can't even imagine being 79 years old. And Donna, bless her heart, she would ask you, how old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? You have to think about that. So my take is, sometimes I feel like I'm going on 40, hiking mountains, skiing and fishing. Other time, I feel like I'm going on 100. And I don't care to do this anymore.
I think I'm about 12.
So, yeah. So I know that you were all there in spirit. I was so tickled with the turnout, even though they say it was going to rain on my parade. No, it didn't.
All right.
We probably had, we had Tito's, one of his 5 bands together here. It was awesome. They're cutting a record.
Nice.
I'm doing some report. Yeah, it's awesome. There's nothing like music for the soul. And puffing on a, roll another one just like the other one. I've been waiting far too long, and I sure would like to hit it. And on my notes here, and I always suggest if you're going to talk on the radio, have some notes down so.
So you know where you're wandering to.
Well, yeah. And another thing that when we learn public speaking, we learn because people don't listen and they interrupt, and I do too. If you slow down, even pause, take a breath, they're more apt to listen to you because they're waiting for what you have to say. So it's really sad to see in California, for example, Nevada, where I went to college in 1968, University of Nevada. Oh, how many years I spent in Nevada. And they used to be, because I got busted in Nevada, I've shared it in 1976, if you can relate to that. And by the way, because I did have court support, which is so important, folks, I had 8 my friends, take the stand and say, I've asked Tom Corey for marijuana. And he wouldn't give it to me. I was up for 20 years for giving away one, friggin' joint signed by narcs. A Fink got out of jail. But you know what? If we stand our ground and we have an attorney like I did, Greg Korn, he filed everything right like we do. And it's so important that 995 probable cause dismiss motion. And the doctors always rule. Joe will tell you that. Many of my court supports going to trial, when those doctors talk, they listen. When we walk into that courtroom with 30 or so or more, and with our doctors, that's what gets the bacon in the fat lady's things. So as always, you continue to stand our ground at whatever level you can. And I'm so thankful for folks like y'all taking over and carry the load for Joe and I and others that have been fighting this battle for all these years. I just remember to don't forget to breathe. Frank's trying to get Frank and without him, and Alex Lyons here. Probably with the help of my friends. Frank was on his way down here to the man cave. Of course, you've been here, and I was hoping he could say hello, but he's hung up with the kids up there and the family, and I'll let him know. And then in Northern California, the reason again why we don't have any cases, and Donna and I know that took a toll on her more than me. Whoa, it's just I just can't relate to what we went through. Joe knows, and he's been through it too. He's been all week in trial, and then they carry you through the weekend, you know, for the final summary. So anyway, and now I haven't been in a courtroom for God, I don't know, a couple of years, Joe, because we stand our ground and we take them to trial, and they can't do it if we do. Of course, they scare you. And these sweet deals, no, they're not. They all screw you. And that's what they don't want you to know. Okay, I want to thank everybody again today. And as always, Donna would say, don't forget to just breathe.
All right, Tom. Well, thank you. You're in rare form today, but I like it. Good stuff.
Yes. And I'm hoping to see you and Liz and Kathy, see that she's doing so good. And we must need more like her. Give them a hug for me. And thank you, Joe, for all you do for so many.
All right, Tom, we'll talk to you soon. All right, Craig. Well, another show down the tubes. I want to know where those tubes are, though. We always say down the tubes, but I never really found the tubes.
Another one in the can, I guess.
Okay, all right, there we go.
Even if the dogs come out of the wall on you.
I know, they come out of nowhere. Boop, they show up and start face licking. All right, Craig. Well, you get the final word here today.
Well, we're here to carry on the fight that Tom started 54 years ago. And always remember that it takes one Tom, one Craig, one Joe, and all that. But collectively, we can make a big difference. Just as they got me out of prison. And just over the last 3 weeks, it looks like we're going to be at least partially responsible for getting Rory Meek sent to live with his family rather than in the federal prison. We have power, and let's use that power.
Absolutely. All right, Craig. Well, we will see you probably tomorrow, but we'll see the rest of you all next week.